OCO Tohichu JC Nihina. Hello, how are you? Jesse here. And the book opens by itself. Isn't that amazing? So Rachel was talking about yoga, and I thought that she might like this book, Yoga for Teachers. And what this is it is an operative manual on how to manipulate the subtle forces of the body via asana and various exercises. And it's pretty in-depth. There's a lot of stuff in here where it is described in its native terminology. But there's also a lot of westernized stuff in here too, such as, well, it talks about the astral body and the planets. All in all, I like it. It's a pretty good book. As with anything though, there are some things I would have done differently. And it is by Goswami Kriyananda. Yeah, Kriyananda. There's an N there. It's difficult to read and hold the camera at the same time. And if you can see that, you know, it starts off talking about, you know, nonviolence, truthfulness, basically how to live. And then it goes into things like, you know, tongue cleaning and how to clear your sinus cavities. Like I said, it gets pretty deep in the disciplines it expects you to follow if you follow the whole book to the letter. Sauna, stretching exercises. It goes over the chakras. And the chakras in this book, they're a little ass backwards from what you would expect. They're kind of in the opposite direction. And there is a reason for that, but the book doesn't exactly go into that much depth as to why. It doesn't really explain why. But anybody who has worked within the Golden Dawn system or the Rosicrucian system before it, or any other esoteric order that draws on the degree structure of the Golden Dawn, you'll know that the Golden Dawn degrees have, well, like Adeptus Minor, it's 5 degrees equals 6 squared. That's 5 up from the bottom of the tree, 6 down. So you've got a dual current there, your upward and your downward current, or your prana and your upana. And that's basically why that's set up the way it is. From what I remember of this book, it's been a few years. It might not slightly align to being a standard inverse of what you're usually used to. And I believe this goes to 441 pages, not counting the preface. Let's see. Yes. Verbal Nongreed, yeah, so it talks about these different tenets or precepts on how to live on multiple levels, both external and internal, which I would say is pretty standard for a text on yoga or any kind of Eastern philosophy that has a focus on the internal, the internal psyche and state of being. Let's see. It's the first part of the book. And it does go over the organs and the nerves and everything of the physical body, because of course we are corporeal creatures, and that very much ties into the whole mind-body dynamic that we live with. What was this? Oh, nasal cleaning, colon cleaning. Like I said, if you follow this book to the letter, it won't be comfortable at times. You will experience some discomfort because, you know, it is a book of cultivating discipline, living a certain way, and it really expects you to get your shit together and cleanse your shit. Just evacuate it out. Talking about negative karma, which it's better than most books when they talk about karma, but there still is some Western influence here. Okay, that's describing asanas. And it's got plates in here. It's got illustrations of the different asanas, which I can't seem to come across. Oh, the path of prana. So that's more your subtle forces of the body there. A lot of people would call it energy work. I find that term very vague. I don't prefer to use it myself. And these are just how that lines up with the different signs of the zodiac. I can do an explanation of that at some point if anybody wants to learn that. Postures. They call it asana in the book instead of asana outright. It's shortened. I'm not exactly sure why, but it is. And that was... Oh. It goes over regulation of body temperature, excretion of waste material, accessory organ of breathing, secretion of oily fluids. So there is quite a bit of practicality to this book in terms of your physical health. It's not simply guided meditations and stretching with good intent. It's a rigorous discipline. Some more cleansing stuff. Oh, here we go. Here's some asanas. Oh, hey, isn't that perfect? The pigeon pose. That does say pigeon, doesn't it? It looks like it does. It looks like it does. There's more. The swastika. The swastika. Love that symbol. It is a real shame it has taken on the connotations it has. But that's okay. Not everybody needs to be reading this book. Affirmation for the sun chakra. Yeah, there's affirmations for the different chakras in here. And for those that don't know, chakra means wheel. They're centers of your bodily forces that are condensed and coalesced in the sense that they are centers. You could probably think of them more like spheres I'm pretty sure the Sanskrit word for wheel, chakra, also means sphere, like the Hebrew word for circle also means sphere, but I would have to double check on that. That's more postures. This looks like a different section. What is this? Salutation of the moon. So I don't know how traditional that is to yoga, but I know it's based on traditional asanas and stuff, but like the salutation of the sun, I don't remember what exact tradition that comes out of. Saw something that was talking about Zen. Oh, lotus pose. My favorite pose. Quite a bit on there on the lotus. The locked lotus. Okay. Oh, okay. And now we have our mudras. Various poses. And this right here, if you can see it, where you have your index finger arced. Your middle finger arced over your index finger. It's a good projective mudra. That's sometimes called the blessing mudra. It's a blessing mudra. I don't remember the Sanskrit or Hindi name of it. It has one. I just don't remember what it is at the moment, because I don't often speak or converse in Hindi. So, palm tree pose. That one looks kind of uncomfortable. I'm not a big fan of a lot of the ones where you have to bend your back quite a bit. No. And people tell me all the time, it's like, oh, you do full lotus so well. Full lotus is a really hard pose, and I don't find it to be that difficult. It's a lot of this, bending completely backward and having your spine at weird angles that I'm just not really down with. That I'm not even too fond of trying, to be quite honest with you. If I had a teacher who made sure I wouldn't end up being a paraplegic, that would be one thing. I do not. Lotus pose. Union pose, similar to lotus. Not that much different. There are some differences. Pranayama. An introduction. So that's your breathing, controlling your breathing. And this book does go over the internal versus the external senses. How you basically you dissociate from your external senses, and then the stuff that you're perceiving within your mind internally, you start to disassociate with that until you go deeper and deeper, and you get to this deeper state of samadhi or non-distinction, which I like. That's the part of yoga that I'm very interested in. I like the asanas too, I do, but my opinion is that if you're just doing the poses, if you're just doing the asanas and you aren't doing any of the internal work, you're just stretching. See, like there it says astral body, so it's bringing in the concept of the astral body, and this is showing the times. So it's talking about tides, bodily tides of the astral body, and the best times to do stuff, because it talks about the kundalini, but it goes into detail. It talks about the kundalini in terms of working with Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva. There's a pose called the easy pose, apparently. And the adept pose, which is similar to the full lotus, if I'm not mistaken. Oh. External, internal, retention. Yeah. So, talking about the pranayama again and the effects that has, external, internally, and your ability to retain what it is that you have done or learned. Duration times intensity equals force. So, I mean, it's going over here about, is it better to do yoga for long periods of time, or is it better to do a more intense routine for a shorter period of time? And it goes over the pros and cons of both, because it's not quite a straightforward answer. Deep breathing, easy breath, and we're going over different techniques of breathing now, obviously. The hissing breath, it's good for snake medicine. The bee breath, cold maker. There's all kinds of techniques in here. Extended 4 phases, motion breath, which I think that's a lot like the fourfold breath that you see ceremonial magicians practicing, if you're familiar with that. 4-phase liberation breath. But see, there's different takes of it in here. There's multiple techniques of multiple techniques. Mantra. Let's see if I can get out of some of this. Okay, sense withdrawal stage. It's where you're progressing into deeper and deeper levels of samadhi. Deep meditation where the object and the subject are becoming less and less distinct until you are one with the experience itself. Lethargy, balance, passionate activity. So here it's talking about the balance between overexerting yourself and not exerting yourself at all, and keeping that rhythm, which is very important. Holding the mind to an object, so being able to concentrate on things, being able to give your full awareness and attention to something. That gets into your Tatrak meditation, where you're focusing on a sole point. And it goes on to talk more about concentration. Concentration. Gazing, that's good for working with crystal balls. You can apply that to that. The nasal gaze. So now you're getting your nose right. Spinal gaze. Oh, yeah, that's another thing that you don't see very often. The position of your spine and your posture can help affect your gaze and your ability to peer into things and to perceive things. And Robert Cochrane, for those of you who are familiar with Robert Cochrane and Cochranian witchcraft, he talks about that in the letters that he wrote, where you kind of curve the spine a little bit and then look over your shoulder at the altar or whatever it is that you're trying to get a feel for or perceive on a more subtle level. Oh, the who am I exercise, going down the existential rabbit hole. What is mantra? How many mantras are there? Good Lord. who can initiate mantra, or how to initiate mantra, I would say. That's a bigger chapter on what is mantra, expanding. And I don't want to go into too much detail reading this to you because, you know, unless you can sit down and read a book like this, you're probably going to get frustrated because a lot of it is not in English. It's an English description of what's going on, but we all know I never settle for that. And this battery will not last me explaining this whole book. Mantra for the group of sanas affecting specific chakras. Okay, that's another thing I might have forgot to mention, is that in this book, when it has chapters going over the different chakras, I know I mentioned there's affirmations, and it lists the stuff that you need to work on in association with each chakra. But it also gives you different asanas, different postures to help activate and work those chakras, which is why the poses that you saw in the book were divided into different areas. The Hong Sol technique. Important facets of meditation preliminary techniques. The sipping breath. You know, just more there's a lot of techniques in this book. Most of this book is technique. The Infinite Lord of Stillness. So that's getting more into the more religious or scriptural nature. The Art of Self-Unfoldment. And that's one of the things I really like about this book, is it is mostly technique. There's a lot of practicality to it. So if you are serious about yoga, a serious yoga practice, a vigorous yoga practice, you know, this is a good book for you, because it helps you actually apply it. There's a lot in this book about actually doing it. Light meditation, thought. Okay. So, a lot of people, when they're meditating, they'll get frustrated because they have trouble quieting their mind. They will get really frustrated with it. And what you want to do is you want to focus on the spaces between the thoughts, the void between the thoughts, and go there, you know, below, beyond where the thoughts arise. That's the crossroads of the mind. And I know I've talked about that in the group before, but that's really important. That's how you get to the still place so that you can receive whatever it is you are to receive. And then up here, you know, that's more of a continuous train of thought. So we're talking about streams of consciousness here, and the difference between the two. Like I said, this is a great book if you're serious about meditation, you're serious about yoga, and you want a good disciplined practice. You know, it gives you a solid foundation, I would say. There are things in this book I would do differently. I use a completely different chakra system. But I would say this is a good, solid introduction that will help prepare you for more of the traditional Eastern stuff. Conduct of life, the meaning of life, the true realities. So, really starting to get down the rabbit hole now. Entering into meditation. See, that's the thing. It covered all those techniques in meditation and stuff, and now it's talking about how to prepare to enter meditation. So the way this book is written, you are expected to know your shit, like read all of it before you start applying this stuff. So, I mean, it could possibly be an intimidating read. I like it, but it's the kind of books that I read. Chakra meditation technique. question meditation, so that's like meditation for divination, I guess you could say. Mercury center, Venus center, talking about the centers, the chakras again. Kriya meditation technique, and that I believe is a technique that comes out of the actual tradition that this book comes out of. It's actually named after the tradition. So I think this is Kriya Yoga. Okay, so that's more New Agey right there. That's talking about the cosmic intelligence, and it's definitely geared for explaining some of these concepts to Westerners. Contemplation, samadhi. Yeah, they're calling samadhi contemplation in here, which isn't completely incorrect, but not the best title, I would say. But they go on to explain it more in the different stages of samadhi, because there are different stages, there are different levels. And we talk about samadhi, usually we're talking about that highest level of it, that non-distinct state. Illumination, 9 stars graph. It's talking about Ananda, which is bliss, and then gross no ideas, gross and ideas. So this is basically what this is you're going from the gross to the more subtle. It's the triads of like transcending the different levels there. And the triangle is really cool. It's one of my personal symbols. I'm very fond of the triangle. But it's very much of paradox and transcendence, bringing two things together to make a third condition that is both or neither. It's how you transcend and go to the next level. The triangle is a transcendent symbol of identity. And it has been that way in a great number of philosophies the world over, all the way back to, well, pretty much back to the first religions, really. Plato talked about it. The Egyptians talked about it. It's in Hindu scriptures. It's in Hindu theology. So it's as old as Sanskrit.